think I'm Fred.
Good evening, everyone. And the Hogs Media Podcast is back today. And we have a brand new, never before experienced topic for you guys today.
That's right.
As you guys obviously know, the Hogs are in a dead period right now. There's no sports going on at all, really. Like, we're right before football season. Baseball's long gone, softball's long gone, track's over, everything's done. So you're just getting ready for the upcoming season. So leading up to the football season, we have decided to do top five position groups for the Hogs. So for today's episode, we're going to do top five quarterbacks in Arkansas Razorback football history, and then next episode we'll do running backs, wide receiver, defense, like expand on that leading up to the season, and then obviously we'll get season, and that starts all of our episodes during football season. But we'll start off with number five. What is your number five?
Well, I'm put my number five. Man, it's like once I get past the top three, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah,
But I always like to take into consideration era, right? What era are we in? What era of football are we talking about? Obviously, a guy who is anywhere from 2001 and beyond is going to just be better than anyone from the 60s or 70s statistically
true.
because the game changed, right? Like football as a whole went way more pass heavy in like the 90s and 2000s and has never looked back. It's kind of like 3-point shooting in the NBA, it
Yeah,
just wasn't even around before the 80s.
good comparison.
So I wanted to try to find a guy from an older era and see what I could find. So uh just to like throw a bone to the older generation, I'm gonna go with Bill Montgomery at number
Nice.
five. And here's why. Prior to Bill Montgomery, basically like no one had more than 1,000 passing yards in a season.
Mm.
There was one guy in 1953 that had 1,100 yards, followed by for like a decade 600, 300, 200, 500, 200, 700, 400, like all the way until like 1965, and there was like 1,100, 1,100. When we get to Bill Montgomery, we he has 3 years in a row where he has like 1,600 yards, 1,300 yards, and 1,600 yards. 3 years in a row as a sophomore, junior, and senior. Uh, and not only that, he is the first quarterback in Arkansas history uh, to break double-digit touchdowns.
Mm.
So in 1967, he had 11. In 68, he had 10. Or sorry, 10, 9, and 10. Um, so I just feel like, he was the first standout quarterback in Arkansas, going through like the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. He kind of like broke the mold by topping, 1,500 yards and double digit touchdowns. And then after him, there was like a couple other guys that were in his same vicinity, like Joe Ferguson and Ronnie South, but they only did it for like 1 year or two. He did it for three. So I'm gonna throw Bill Montgomery a bone
I
from
like it.
1968 to 1970. Way to just get us over the 1,000 yard mark and double digit touchdown mark before once again a pretty long streak of not really doing that. Or he kind of like set a new standard. So going with Montgomery.
I like it. Respect to the OGs. Well, I going off that, I mean, I don't think a lot of teams ran like threw the ball a lot. Like you said, everybody ran the option or ran the ball a ton. So 1,000 yards back then was a big deal. So I love the pick. I like it. Yeah, Arkansas football sort of on the map. That's when we dominated for the drop, sadly. My number five is not from the 60s or 70s. but it feels like it to most of us. It's Matt Jones, who played about 20 years ago, and he is not a classic quarterback because he used to run the ball like crazy. He was such an insanely good runner. I'm sad I didn't get to like watch him live. I was too young, but after watching his highlights, he dominated. Throwing the ball, he had a cannon. He would just torch defenses, and then play action with him. The RPO, I mean, he dominated. Matt Jones had almost 6,000 career passing yards, and then he had 2,500 rushing yards. And then he was the SEC leader in rushing yards per attempt in 2003 and 2004 with almost 8 yards an attempt. So Matt Jones, even though we weren't great during his era, I think we won one bowl game during his time. He played, like you said, for a couple of years. Same thing as your guy. So he was there for a couple of years. I like that. I just feel like he belongs in the list. So I have Matt Jones at number 5.
Yeah. Listen, I wanted to put Matt Jones in there. I loved Matt Jones back like in the day, 2000 or early 2000s. I was like 13, 14 years old watching him. Miracle on Markham. I still
Such a
remember
good
that
throw.
play. Yeah. Um, like Matt Jones has like top three status in terms of Razorback lore
Yes.
as a
Yes.
quarterback. It's like
Yes.
as a like just he made Arkansas football exciting and fun to watch. His ability to move with his legs. This was like prior to the Vince Young era, right? Or like around the same time as the Vince. So
Right
this was
before, I
before
think.
running quarterback was like a big thing. There was no running quarterbacks at this time, or it was very rare. So he was kind of on that like precipice of like the Vince Youngs and the Michael Vicks, and like these guys that could like use their legs and throw. So yeah, loved Matt Jones. I wanted to put him on my list, but I couldn't put him over a few of my other guys that I have. I mean, I could have put him above Montgomery, but again, I wanted to make room for
Can't. You had to pay your respects. You had
I had to
to.
pay my respects to the 60s. So yeah.
Well, I had to put Matt Jones on because anybody that can play for Razorback basketball while putting up the stats he did in Razorback football has to belong on my list. So he had to come in at 5.
Yeah, that's fair.
Moving on to 4, I'll go first this time. At 4, I put Brandon Allen. No, his career did not get off to a hot start. Everybody knows that. We went 3-9, no SEC wins. It was a rough year. I think his truck got lit on fire. I'm sure everybody remembers that story. Comes back to his truck being burnt alive on campus. But overall, he had a great record with us. His record was 25-24. Everybody knows his horns down. He beat Texas in the Texas Bowl, and he beat Kansas State in the Liberty Bowl to end his career. His stats are pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie. He had 7,463 career passing yards, and he's second in program history in both passing completions and third in completion percentage at 57 for his career. So for a guy that started off on a 3-win team to end with those stats and to end with those awards, everybody remembers his senior year and that Ole Miss game where he just went off, and a couple other games where he was just on fire. It felt like he didn't throw any incompletions. So I got Brandon Allen coming in on at number 4. What about you?
Yeah, I like Brandon Allen. We'll probably hear that name again
Oh,
later.
hints.
But at my number 4, I've got someone that I think you actually might have a little bit higher. Oh wait, no. I think who
Thanks for spoiling my list.
no. You don't have him anywhere. You don't
Okay,
have
way to
I don't
go.
know who you have. But I got Clint Sterner.
I love it.
I got him at number 4. You've probably got some more stats that you can share on him, but in 1998, which was Houston Nutt's first year with the team, and Sterner had already, I don't know if that was his senior year or junior year,
That was
but
his
in
junior.
98 junior year, He led us to tied for first in the West, 9-3. We were 6-2 in conference. In terms of overall passing yards, he is ranked number 5 on the all-time list. And in terms of passing touchdowns by season, he has the 4th best touchdown season, as well as the 11th best touchdown season. On his career, he's number 4 on the list of total touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, just the dude was awesome. Finished in the Citrus Bowl, lost in the Citrus Bowl, and then won in the Cotton Bowl. So two great years there in 98 and 99. And he had the stumble, which sucked.
Everybody knows the stumble.
Everyone knows the Sterner stumble, lost against a friggin' Peyton Manning Tennessee team. But other than that, which is also in Razorback lore, I mean, Sterner was great, man.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody's seen the movie Greater, everybody knows who Clint Sterner is. He's the main character in that movie because it portrays the 98 season. It's Burrowsworth season. It's his senior year. Most Razorback fans have seen that film. But Clint Sterner was very instrumental in that season, dominated, and then he came back 99, like you said, destroyed Texas. Great, great Razorback, and I think he brought the passion back to the Razorbacks for us to enter into the early 2000s and the Matt Jones era. But
Yeah.
continuing, number
Yeah, he
3,
definitely broke the trend in terms of
struggles.
like passing yards, like let me find it year by year. Like sorry, pulling it up here.
You're good.
300-yard passing, where is it? Oh, where did that? Oh, there it is. There it is. There's the year by year. So yeah, like leading up to Clint Sterner.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I lost my page that gave me the year by year. Ah, sorry. Carry on. Move on.
Well, while we're talking about Sterner, he ended up with 74.22 passing yards, 7,422. He had 57 career passing touchdowns. We just talked about 1998, that glorious year, besides his fumble, of course. He finished top 5 in pass attempts, completions, yards per attempt, passing touchdowns, and total yards. So if
Yes.
anybody doubts his impact during 1998 because of that stupid fumble, just listen to what I just said. Because without Clint Sterner at the helm, we're not winning anything. So
Yeah.
everybody, I feel like he's underappreciated by Hog fans because of the stupid fumble, and because we ended with a loss that season. It could have been much more, but we're not even in that position if we don't have Clint Sterner as quarterback.
Yeah. Here's what I was looking for. Again, in terms of like something that I look at in terms of greatness is like, can you reset the era like of Razorback football? So like I talked about, my number 5 guy was Montgomery, who also is in our top 5 of highest completion percentage of all time. Bill Montgomery was. Clint Sterner, similar, like the years leading up to him, there was only one quarterback that ever topped 2,000 yards in a season, and 0 quarterbacks had ever gotten to 20 touchdowns. Clint Sterner comes in his first year, gets 2,300 yards, which was a season record. And then he did that 3 years in a row. He did 2,300, 2,600, 2,200, and touchdowns. First year he had 12, but then in 98, 26 throwing touchdowns. And then in 99, 19 throwing touchdowns. So he really broke the mold of what it means to be a Arkansas quarterback, and like breaking 2,000 yards, breaking 20 touchdowns. That he paved the way and did things that opened the door for guys like Matt Jones and future guys to do later on. So that's why I like Sterner. Um, that's why I put him above Matt Jones. I just feel like his ability to consistently stay above 2,000 passing yards and do it in an era where we're not even close to that. That's why I like him.
I like it. I agree. You have your number three prepared?
I do. I have my number three. So this guy was not even on my list at first. He, to me, was going to be an honorable mention because I felt disappointed in the winning success that we had with him. But in terms of like what he did actually just like as a quarterback, he can't control wins and losses. Um, but the more I dug into like what he did over the course of 3, 4 years, it's undeniable. I gotta put KJ Jefferson
Oh
at number
my
three.
gosh. I thought you were gonna say that. I can't believe you're putting KJ number three.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I didn't think KJ was that solid.
Yeah.
But two of the top 10
Mhm.
most passing yards per season, KJ Jefferson has them.
Yeah.
So two of the top 10 most passing yards in a season, KJ's in there twice. In terms of um like overall touchdowns, he's the touchdown leader for all of Razorback football. Obviously combination of passing and running. Um, but even just in terms of um completion percentage, he's number one by a long shot. And if he wasn't racking up the yards, like I said, and racking up touchdowns, completion percentage wouldn't mean much. But like to have the highest completion percentage and be leading in like yards, that means he's getting a lot of attempts and getting like a lot of throws. He leads in touchdowns. So to me, like you don't look at the history of Razorback, like you don't look in the record books. You can't swing a dead cat through a record books without hitting KJ Jefferson's name on every major statistical category: yards, touchdowns, completions, completion percentages. He's in the top 10 or the top 5 in every single one of those.
It's undeniable. You are right. Like he's there throughout every stat. It's true. So I even though I do not have KJ on my list, I do like the pick at three because it was just tough to put him on my I put Tyler Wilson at three. He was kind of the guy I grew up watching as a kid. I know his second year is kind of marred by the John L. Smith era. We've talked about eras, and that one was an awful one for a year, and we won 4 games. But he had 7,765 career passing yards, 52 touchdowns, and in 2011, the year we went to the Cotton Bowl, everybody knows we beat Kansas State, and Colin Klein, who was like a Heisman finalist that year, he led the SEC in passing yards, pass attempts, and pass completions. And that was when the SEC was stacked. Like that was, I think, the Aaron Murray era. LSU had their quarterback. I think it was Jefferson, but I'm not for sure. Alabama had either McCarron or one of those dudes that always put up stats. Auburn had some studs. So it's not like he won when the SEC was down. Like this is when the SEC was still up top tier. And for him to lead in those stats, that's pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie. And the fact that so he's number two.
That's
What were you say?
sorry. No, keep going.
I was just gonna say, and he also finished number two in passing touchdowns.
I mean, listen, I wanted to put Tyler Wilson on my list. He was on he was on that list for me. I think had he started a third season,
Mhm.
that probably would have bumped him up there, right? Ahead of Sterner. I'm noticing all my guys had 3 years of success. KJ, uh, 3 years of, you know, success. Sterner, Montgomery, like all these guys. So maybe that's what did it for me was just longevity. But yeah, his 2 years at the helm, I mean, he did really great. I mean, yeah, like you said, 3,000 yards, 60 percent completion percentage. I mean, that's like awesome. Both years as a starter, like
Yeah.
yeah, dude put up numbers. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty impressive and to lead us to a Cotton Bowl. He continued that era of success with Bobby Petrino that we had going. And then I think if Petrino doesn't leave, we might make it. I don't know if to the national championship, but we make it pretty far. We had a bunch of studs come back, and you just talked about the 3 years thing. We almost got Tyler Wilson for only 1 year. A lot of people thought he was going to declare for the draft with that stud junior season he had, and
Yeah,
ultimately he probably should have. I think his draft status was higher that year, but he wanted to finish out his career as a Razorback. So he came back, and this was before Petrino's stuff obviously happened, but he stuck through it, did not transfer, none of that, and that's why I had him on my list. Now, if he would have transferred, done something, it's very tough to put transfers on this top five list because, like you said, I feel like they have to be committed to being a hog. Which KJ is a different story. KJ kind of needed to get out, but all these
yeah,
guys, I feel like they put in their time, and that's why they belong on this list.
yeah. I think you're
Sweet.
right.
Number two.
Number
Who do you
two.
got?
So my number two is someone you had a little bit lower. I'm kind of surprised I put him there, but again, just longevity, overall stats. I'm going with Brandon Allen.
Oh man, let's go.
Listen, he's the only one other than my number one that ever broke 30 passing touchdowns in a season. He is the only one other than my number one to or no, sorry, not the only one, but he is one of very few, other than Tyler Wilson, to get over 3,000 passing yards in a year. He had 3 years of starting success. Um, yeah, 2013, 14, 15. Um, got us to Texas Bowl and Liberty Bowl, won 2 bowl games for us. Um, in his senior year, we tied for third in the West, which is one of our better finishes, sadly. Um, so yeah,
I
literally one of our so Sterner was one of the only other better finishes. Obviously, our national championship year in '64, but Sterner's year was one of our better finishes, tying for first in the West. And then the only other time that we finished like up higher was Casey Dick, and we
yeah,
know that it had nothing to do with him. Had everything to do with McFadden and Felix Jones, and even Casey Dick didn't even start most of that year. That was the year that Mitch was
Mustang.
was one of the main. Mitch started half the year, and Casey Dick started the other half of the year. So yeah, so that's why I got Brandon Allen up there,
Yeah, he had a
tied
lot
for
of.
third West, one of our better seasons.
That was a good season. That was a
Yeah,
prime time for the dark days of the Chad Morris era. But my number two, kind of following the trend of the number twos right here, is someone you had lower on your list, Clint Stoner. We've talked about him plenty when you had him on your list, so I don't need to read off the stats again. But like you said, put in the time, was a great leader, and when like we said, the stats had a lot of success. I mean, was top five in SEC categories all throughout 1998. Pretty much dominated, did what he was supposed to. Came back 99, could have fallen off after the disappointing end of 98. Didn't. Him and Anthony Lucas dominated 1999. Got us to the Cotton Bowl, where we whooped up on Texas, horns down. So number two, Clint Sterner. On to number one. Who do you got? I think we both agree on this.
Yes, I would hope so. I would hope all of Razorback Nation agrees on this.
Yes, I would hope so as well.
I mean, what this guy did in 2 seasons, uh, averaged 3,700 yards a season, averaged 31 touchdowns a season, had a phenomenal completion percentage. One year was 55%, the next year was 64% completion on a crap ton of attempts, over 400 attempts both years. And his interception rate for that, the touchdown to interception ratio, 32 to 12 and 30 to 7.
Insane.
Got it. And the team won. Team uh, um, finished in by going to the Sugar Bowl, um, second in the West, and then the next year won the Cotton Bowl, finishing third in the West. 11-2 that year. 11-2 and finished third in the West. How stupid is that?
Well, the Cotton Bowl was Tyler Wilson.
Oh, sorry.
Mallet had the Liberty Bowl, and we went 8-5, and
And then the
then
Sugar
we had the
Bowl.
Sugar Bowl. Yeah.
Sorry, I bumped it. I was looking at the wrong year there. But yeah, obviously we know his name, Ryan Mallett. May he rest in peace.
Yes.
What did you love about the Ryan Mallett days?
So yeah, that was when I was a younger kid. I just remember he would just torch the ball down the field. Just remember play actions to Nile Davis and Dennis Johnson, and he would throw it deep to one of our many great wide receivers. I mean, we had Jarius Wright, Kobe Hamilton, Joe Adams, Chris Gregg, DJ Williams. I mean, he had so many weapons, and it was just awesome to see this big, like tall giant just stand back there and hum the football around the field. Like it was so awesome to watch as a young kid. Just be like, wow, he is. And like you said, we won. Like some of these quarterbacks, we've had to be like, yeah, they had down years, but both years he was there, like you just said, 8-5, bowl win, and then 10-3, and our Sugar Bowl loss. That was barely, and it technically counts as a win because Ohio State had it vacated, whatever. But he had a great game that game. He just threw an interception late in the game that ended up costing us, but that's it. Like you said, his stats are insane. I found something. He was number one in passing yards in the SEC 2009 and 2010 with over 3,600 passing yards both years. And this is the biggest stat that like stood out to me, which is like undeniable. Ryan Mallett has to be number one, and it's that he had the most total yards per play, not only in the SEC, but in all of college football in 2009 with almost 8 yards of play. And that led all of college football. You're not going to ever see that with Razorback quarterbacks. Ever. We don't ever lead the NCAA in anything good. So,
Right.
so that was awesome to see. Like not only the SEC, but he led all of college football, putting Arkansas on the map.
Yep.
I mean, he brought us back. Talk about eras. We were struggling before then, had a couple of off years after the McFadden era, and then brought Ryan Mallett in, and he dominated those 2 years. If only we could have got him for three. That's oh man.
Yeah, that year, 2010, he had 5 plays that were 80 yards or more. So he was just like a downfield friggin' slinger, man. I remember I graduated the same year as Ryan Mallett. He was in my class. And dude, he would just like wait for a guy just to, like streak like 40 yards downfield and he just man, he can just throw it in the air so far, so high. Kobe Hamilton, Joe Adams. I mean, these guys would just run up under it. I remember one game, it was against LSU.
Yes.
And yeah, and it was like uh, something like 7 seconds before halftime. And LSU had just scored and they kicked it off to us. And so I think we got the ball at the 20-yard line after a touchback. And the announcer, I remember the announcer specifically saying, well, we'll probably just see a kneel down here. And because I think we were up still by like 3 points or something. And Petrino called a like post route. About like the pass was maybe like 20, 23 yards downfield to Kobe Hamilton. He caught it, broke one tackle from the safety, and he was off, scored 80-yard touchdown. And that play ended up being the difference maker because we ended up winning the game
Yeah.
by less than 6 points. And I remember being like, why would you not go for something? Like you have one play, you can make one play. The chance of a pick six, pretty slim. Just give it a shot. So
Yeah.
I always loved it. Just Mal was so gutsy and so ballsy and just would go for it. Him and Petrino together was like such a fun combo.
He was a gunslinger for sure. You just used the word gutsy. He just stood back there. And like you said, he just stood there and waited for his guy to get up. It's not like he like was very mobile. He just stood back there and literally, like you said, just and it would just go.
He
That was
was slow, man.
yeah.
He could not run.
But he didn't
He
need to.
his
When you got an arm like that, who cares about your feet
Yeah,
slinging around the field?
dude. He got famous around campus for walking in to class, and we're talking like huge classes, like auditorium classes where there's like 200 like students taking one class, and he'd walk in and just yell out to the whole auditorium, "Who has a Scantron for Ryan Mallett?" And like people are just like, dude, this isn't high school. Like, bring your own dang Scantron. Sure enough, someone would be like, here, dude, like, take a Scantron.
Back when they did Scantrons in college. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
What do they do now? Do they not do Scantrons anymore? Dude,
No, dude, everything's online.
really?
Yeah, I mean, I had one class, I had first day where we used Scantrons, and that's because the professor didn't want to grade. So we just used Scantrons. But other than that, yeah, even paper tests, they just take the test, do it on paper, and then grade it that paper.
All right.
So professors, I guess, are more committed to the grind now.
That's right. More committed to the grind. You miss the Scantrons, miss the Scantron
I
days.
had that in high school. Like that's what I had growing up, middle school and high school. We had Scantrons all the time for like standardized testing and all that, but they're pretty much extinct now, I think.
Yeah, sounds about right.
But that sums up our list. Oh, well, honorable mentions. Do you have any honorable mentions before we?
Well, I would say my honorable mentions, like, were in your top five.
Oh, okay.
So I got to put Matt Jones as an honorable mention. I got to put Tyler Wilson as an honorable mention. Honestly, man, ugh. Here's the thing. I really should take Bill Montgomery out of my top five. He doesn't deserve to be there. Like one of those two, Matt Jones or Tyler Wilson, should be in there. If anything, I could see someone making a case for Fred Marshall because he won a national championship with us. But the guy literally that year threw for 600 yards and 4 touchdowns on 8 interceptions. Like, that's nothing. Like, you cannot be a great quarterback and
Yeah,
throw touchdowns and 8 interceptions on 600 yards. I mean, that is like literally a nothing stat.
yeah, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad.
It's so bad. Some of the other old schoolers that like maybe people could make a case for, like looking back. I mean, Quinn Grovey, do you feel like he's an honorable mention?
Yeah, that was on my honorable mention. I got his stats. He had 4,496 passing yards, 29 touchdowns passing, 1,746 career rushing, 21 rushing touchdowns. Arkansas All Century team, All SWC selection 1988. And we won the Southwest Conference in 1988, 1989. So, I mean, obviously, we didn't pass the ball a lot back then. It was like hand it off, pitch it, or throw a little pass. And that was our offense back then, and it worked because we made the Cotton Bowl. We just didn't win. But I just liked him because we won a lot, and he was, I mean, he did everything for us. And then my only other one I had was KJ, who was on your list.
Yeah.
KJ King was close, but I didn't put him quite on there.
Yeah. Yeah. KJ, man. the he doesn't quite pass the eye test like some of the other quarterbacks did, but
Yeah.
statistically, man, he's there.
I hope KJ dominates at UCF and he does great. And he was great for us, but a new era has begun, the Taylor Green era.
Feeling green.
Which
What
yes,
what's the over under on let's see what I mean, so KJ Jefferson, his best year, he threw for 2,600 yards. The Arkansas record set by Ryan Mallett is 3,800 yards, passing yards. Taylor Green is more of a combo quarterback, some running and some throwing. So now that you have both those reference points, so 38 or 3,600 was like Tyler Wilson's best year. Ryan Mallett did 36 and 38, and KJ did 2,600 twice. What's the over under on Taylor Green's
so
pass yards?
so I trust in the Petrino offense. So I would say 3,000 if Taylor was not a running quarterback. Since he is a running quarterback, I will say he hovers. I think he beats KJ just because it's a different offense. Even though people will say Kendall Briles ran sort of this, it's still not Petrino esque. I think he'll get around 2,850 yards, somewhere around there. 28 to 29 range is where I'm going to go. And then about maybe 600 rushing yards.
All right.
I don't know about touchdowns, but I'll go
All
yard
right.
wise. What
I
what what do you
think,
got?
yeah, I think with Petrino, yeah, running the offense, I think he has to hit 3,000 passing yards.
I got you. For us to
If,
like,
again, stays if he stays healthy.
yeah,
Um, I think he has to hit 3,000. If he doesn't hit 3,000, then I think our offense is not not going at the pace that it should be.
yeah, I agree. I think in order for us to make a bowl game or even reach the depths we want to, he has to get 3,000.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah, that ends today's edition of the Hogs Media podcast. Thank you guys for the support, and we're looking forward to the future episodes. Thank you.
if you